Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Callie, and today I'm going to be going over some of my favorite fantasy worlds. So obviously my favorite genre of book is fantasy, especially high fantasy. High fantasy versus, I guess, low fantasy. What I consider that is a world entirely away from the real world. So it is a completely made up, that whole kind of thing. Whereas like Harry Potter is low fantasy for me because it still takes place within our world. And the author can make almost like pop culture and geographical references within the story, and I immediately know where it is and don't have to look to a map. Whereas in high fantasy, when they refer to different places, usually with that comes a descriptor of 30 miles south or 2 days by foot east, stuff like that is used more within the language and prose of the story. Now with that can come a lot of information dumping with the worlds, how they work, how the magic works with the world, because there are some stories where the magic is intermixed with the land. So you have almost a twofold information dumping scenario. I've chosen 8 books with really great world building that doesn't feel info dumpy. The world is fantastic, easy to follow, or if it's not even easy to follow, with the way the prose is written, it's easy for the reader to follow. I love all of these books. They're just so well written and propel you through the story, along with giving you information on the magic and on the world. So, the first book that I have on this list is Ace of Shades by Amanda Foody. This takes place in a world where basically where we start is like this Sin Island, and this is usually marketed as like a Sin City meets YA fantasy. That's exactly what it is. This felt as if it should have been in black and white. I imagined this whole story in black and white because it had that very Sin City, I want to say like very 50s Las Vegas feel. But it was an entirely different world with high magic. And the magic was a like bloodline magic, so stuff was passed down. You had a primary and a secondary magic depending on what your parents had, which was all amazing. And one thing that I liked about this is we did stay on this island, but we were also given references to other aspects of the world. Our main character travels on a boat to get to this place, and we explore that entire island in and of itself, as well as getting references to other areas within the world and how they work differently, politically, economically, and all of that. And we're given all of this political and economic information, as well as I can fully tell you where the slums are in this world and where that line is. Also, there's like the universities, there's the scholars like district, and all of these really cool places that are so easily pinpointed. So I love this story. The world is just fantastic. The next one takes a much darker turn, and that is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. The world and system is based off of ancient China, and it is kind of based around the Opium Wars, which is why it's called The Poppy War. And this world is very similar to China, where China, Japan, and the Philippines are located. It also brings in those different cultures into this world. Our main character, Rin, is a lot darker skinned than the other people at the academy, and she's made fun of for it. So you get to see that racism and all of that within this world, as well as the world itself. Now this book follows a war, a very dark and intense war. And what I liked about how it built this world up is we were shown that through strategic and tactical decisions made by generals, and how they were able to understand what sacrifices and the give and take that is needed in war. And that really made you understand how the world is stationed, as well as how each area views another within this world. This is an adult fantasy book, and it is not necessarily adult for typical reasons. It's the violence. This one, all about the violence. Just so much violence in this book, but it is so good, and it really shows the consequences of decisions made during wartime and it also deals with addiction and grief, PTSD within this world, and you get to see how it affects different people within it, and the different people, how where they were in different aspects of the war, how it affected them. It's just this book, this series is fantastic. I've yet to finish it, but it's fantastic thus far. The next one that I have is Illuminae by Amie Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. Now this is a sci-fi, so this takes place in outer space, which with world building in outer space can either be just they're humans from Earth traveling throughout space, or it's just an entirely new planet and world. Illuminae is like that, where we're on a planet that gets invaded and they have to go through space and navigate through space. So we're not really even given a map in this. We are at times, I want to say, format is presented in a multimedia form. So there's text messages, there's like a map every so often. But I think the way that Illuminae and the other two books showcase the world so well is through the political system and how the political system works and how everything trickles down. This, I had no issue figuring out how the world worked. It was presented so easily and so flawlessly and sucked me in. Even when we get back to the planet that was invaded, I don't really have any questions on how the planet is and how it looks or anything. It just started storming very hard. But I had no questions, and I think that that's a sign of really good world building, is you don't question things. You just fully understand how everything works. Next one that I have is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This world is inspired by ancient Rome, and very much get that at the very beginning. And I love this world. The map is on the end pages, which is one of my favorite things, so I don't have to keep flipping through the first couple of pages to find it again. But everything in this one, everything's kind of taken everything in this world is kind of taken piece by piece as you work your way through the series. And I actually really like that. It's a really good trick for authors to use to show you and expand the world itself, is to just slowly introduce it to you as it becomes pertinent knowledge. So when you start off, you're really only in this like 1 or 2 cities, and then in book 2 you're introduced to like 3 or 4 cities, and you can expand from there. And it's all pertinent to the plot, so it doesn't feel heavy or too much, and everything feels pertinent, which I think is really important. I love this series. I really need to finish it because the last book just came out in December, I want to say. It's on the list to get done, but this is an ancient Rome inspired story where we follow these two characters, Elias and Leia, I don't really know how to pronounce her name, and they're trying to navigate and survive in this world. So it's all a good time. Similarly, with the ancient Rome theme, we have another book that is based off of ancient Rome, which is Nevernight. Now this one has a lot of magic with the world itself, not necessarily a lot of magic, but she has this power to like deal with the shadows, and you eventually get information as to why that is and how it intertwines with the land. But the land is basically bones in this world, where there's like, I think the main city is like the rib cage. Yeah, it's called the spine. And then there's places called like the heart. So it's like these cities are built off of the bones of a fallen god. And it's really cool how all of that works. Plus, that actually gives you a really good visual as to where everything is, because you know how a skeleton is built. And this uses that flawlessly. I love Nevernight. It's an assassin story of a girl who wants revenge on the basic Caesar of this world. And she goes to an academy of assassins to hone her skills. And it's great. Up next is probably one of my favorite underrated series, and that is Furyborn by LeGrand. I love this book in this series. Furyborn takes place in a dual timeline. Same world, dual timeline, 1,000 years ago and present day. And their stories intertwine, and it's fantastic. And what I love about this is you get different bits of information within each timeline. Each expands upon the other. You would think that only the present day would expand upon what's happened over the last 1,000 years, but you still get that context in the past, and I loved those chapters. Actually, those were my favorite part, was when we followed Riel, and I just loved her chapters, and I loved how she explained and saw the world. I did love Eliana as well. She is a fantastic character. So that's the whole plot of this book, is we're following these two women 1,000 years apart. One is the Sun Queen, one is the Blood Queen. Go ahead and figure out which is which. One brings salvation, one brings death to the world. Enjoy. It's fantastic and so well executed. The world, the political system, the economic system, the magic system, all top notch, all fantastic. Now, I couldn't get through this list without bringing up Throne of Glass, because Throne of Glass's world is phenomenal, and the way that Sarah J. Maas does her pacing to expand upon our world is so good. I love Aurelia, and I think she went about expanding our world so well. It was that very similar to like Ember in the Ashes, where each book we got a little bit more of the world until about, I want to say, Queen of Shadows and Empire Storm, more Empire Storms I would say, is where we travel the most and get more understanding of the world. But even when we get to Empire Storms, we're visiting a lot of new places. I still had a general basis of information when I went into it. And I only had that base of information because every so often they would bring it up in the earlier books, but not to the point of where it's like, this country has this town has that. It was all it was all inserted into our plot. So it made sense. Or I was like, oh yeah, when Selena did this, it was in this town, and that's what I know about it. And that becomes pertinent information. And I love that. Granted, it's also probably because I've read this series. I'm on my 3rd or 4th reread currently. But I digress. Even when I read it the first time, I was never confused about placement. I rarely had to go back and forth with the map, which is another indication to me that the world building's top notch. If I have to keep flipping back and forth through my map, which don't get me wrong, I still do because I'm a visual learner. It's a good indication that I can understand your world and follow your characters through it. And the last book is another indication of slowly introducing areas into our world as our story goes, is the Fallen Kingdom series by Morgan Rhodes. I love this series. It's so expansive. It's a YA Game of Thrones, and I lived for this series. This is a 6-book long series, all complete, so you can binge it. And it did just that. It slowly introduced our world. And even I think as we went on, so we're given this like very basic map of like 3 sections. As we like progress throughout the books, the map gets more and more detailed because we're following, I think, like 6 different characters. Like 6 different characters within this entire series. And I never got confused as to where they were. And I loved that. It was so well done. This world, this one is a big example of a world where the magic is imbued in the land. And I think that the way that that was explained and shown to us as the readers was very well done. 100%, 10 out of 10 on world building with this series because it just got better with each book, 100%. And I loved it. And we got to like revisit different areas that we were before, and that was always really fun. Highly recommend it. So those are the books that I think have some of the best world building. There are a ton more that do have really good world building or even just magic. How they explain their magic systems is really well done. That's gonna be it for today's video. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, and I will see you guys in our next video. Bye!